Roman Brady is the founder and CEO of Air Locker Training, a health and wellness franchise that simulates fitness training at high altitude. He says you get up to 30% better results compared to training at sea level. Air Locker gives you a variety of tailor-made group training sessions, all run by accredited coaches, and the aim is to set a new standard in the fitness industry and give the clients the results they're after. There are now more than 8 Air Locker Training franchises around the country, more than 70 around the country very soon. He's been an engineer turned CEO. Roman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
First question, the first album you purchased, and was it a cassette?
You know what? It was a cassette, and it was a Bob Marley cassette. And I didn't purchase it. I took it off my sister.
Stolen.
And I remember that really well. I used to play it all the time. My dad was from New Zealand. He was a Maori. He was big into that Rastafarian kind of style of music. So that was my first one. And I borrowed it. Let's say I borrowed it.
Have you given it back?
No, I think my sister, she had plenty. She was a big muso. So I don't think she missed it too much.
Nice. Mine was Poison. Open up and say, first purchase. Mum was horrified. Anyway, so what sort of kid were you growing up? Obviously stole music from your sister, but, but what else?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was a brat. I was. Very high energy, undiagnosed ADHD for sure, class clown, but ultimately I think I was a pretty ambitious kid, very active, loved my sports, loved my friends, had a really active kind of, any sport I could do, I would do. Like I said, at class, I wasn't the most naturally gifted student, but I always had like a knack of sucking up to the teachers. Like, you know, they used to allow me to go out for a run if I was getting in trouble. I always had like help through my schooling. So I think people liked the genuine nature I was, but just loved to have a good time. When I was a kid, got in a little bit of trouble, used to push the boundaries a fair bit, but I lived in town in Dubbo, like a small town in New South Wales, Dubbo. So we lived in town until I was around about 11 and just got in a little bit too much trouble as a kid. So my dad seen that I had some promise in sports and took me out, and we lived on a farm, a little hobby farm, 100 acres, about 30 k's out of Dubbo, and we lived in a workman's cottage. Actually, this is bringing back memories. And my room was a little corner in the lounge room with my 2 sisters. So that was an experience. Very close. But yeah, we lived out on a farm and they ended up leaving home pretty early, and I was alone a lot, I had a lot of time by myself, so my imagination, always had a big imagination. So it was always like making up my own games in the backyard, kicking the footy between the two trees. So I think I was always an active kid, had a huge amount of imagination as a kid, and ultimately I think a rough diamond would be a good way to describe my childhood.
And you're a rah-rah boy, yeah?
No, I wasn't actually. I played rugby league in Dubbo. There wasn't too much rugby union. It was a very big league town. A lot of great athletes come out of Dubbo. And so I was a rugby league guy, and when I was 15, I would play a little bit of rugby at school, but I was at an Australian kind of tryouts for rugby league under 15s, and I went really well there, and at that tournament there were some scouts from schools, rugby schools, and that was kind of the ticket out of Dubbo for me. So I got a scholarship to Kinross Woolloomooloo School. I had a couple of offers to Sydney's. I picked Kinross because it was co-ed. I didn't want to go to Joey's or King's. I didn't like the idea of going to all boys school, and although I didn't want to go to that school, it was probably the best thing I did at that age. My dad really pushed me to go to that rugby school. Great opportunity, education, boarding. So I left home when I was 15, and that was the first time I played rugby, was when I went to school.
Yeah, nice. And how'd that go? Like career-wise, you talked about your coach later on.
Yeah, well, look, when I went to Kinross, I think as a kid growing up in Dubbo, working class kind of family, pretty modest. The world didn't really make too much sense. Like, it's quite closed, right? So, what I knew back then was play football. That was the ticket to buy mum and dad a house. That was kind of all I really knew. So when you go to boarding school, the amount of mentors that you get there and the care that people that are in your environment give you. A lot of my schooling mates, would go to their house. Their fathers were doctors and mothers were, lawyers, and they had these huge houses with tennis courts and spas. And the thing that I learned about it was they were normal people, right? The connection that those parents had with their kids was like mates, right? So I was like, geez, these people are normal. Like if they're normal, like I could probably have this too. So I think that sparked a big kind of moment in my life where, the world opened up. It was like I opened my eyes up to what the world was, and normal people can achieve great things. And that was the biggest thing I got out of being at that school, apart from falling in love with learning and education. Before that wasn't cool, right? It wasn't cool in Dubbo to be smart. It was only cool to, get girls, play footy, good at fighting. That was the cool thing, right? Whereas you go to a facility like Kinross Woollaroy School and co-curricular activities like drama, singing, cadets, going well at school. These things were celebrated. I never forget this. Second day I was at Kinross, I was lucky enough to go in a cottage with other football players and sporting personalities that were at school. And there was this big Fijian dude there, right? The year before, he just killed it in the rugby season. So he was a year younger when he got there. So the very second day I was there, they used to have this thing, 3-hour prep. 3-hour prep, what is that? It means you go back and you do 3 hours of study before you go to bed. I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. No one in this room's doing this. I'm going to go see Apanisa, this Fijian guy. I go into his room. He's like, mate, I've got study. I was like, what? Come on, let's do something. Let's go down to the servo or something. I don't know. He said, mate, I'm studying. And I just remember that set the tone for me. And like anything in life, you start something, you start learning the textbook or whatever, history or maths, you get into that flow and it's like you want to learn more, you want to educate yourself more, and I guess that's where that addiction for learning started.
Roman, do you ever have that sliding doors moment though where you go, I wonder what life would be like if I didn't end up in a great Sydney boarding school, if I had have stuck around in Dubbo for high school?
Mate, I just think I'm grateful. I just think I'm grateful. I look back at it and I just think there's so many of these points and people, these sliding door moments, like you say, whether it be that move to school, whether it be, somebody that's seen something in me and gave me some advice, whether it be, all of those things. I'm just so grateful that it was a culmination of what's made me who I am. The way I think about things, the way I see things, obviously all of these things had an impact on. So I'm just very grateful that I've had those moments in my life. But 100%, if it went the other way, it's always wondering what could have been and what was the pivotal moment. And I think it was just a culmination of all these pivotal moments and things that have happened to me that gave me the mindset I have now, that allows me to really be comfortable with who I am and do what I'm doing now. So
it also sounds like you've become more and more open to it though. I can imagine a 12-year-old you is very different to the 22-year-old you. It sounds like you were meeting people along the way and going, if I listen to them, I'll learn something. Has that grown in you, that ability to open up and learn from someone?
Yeah, the key point in my life was when my wife was pregnant with our first son, Noah, who's now 10. I kind of went into this different level. Like I think, so now 10 years ago, I would have been 24. So at that stage, all this stuff had happened, right? Sliding door moments. But then I learned this one thing called reflection. And I think I was watching maybe a Les Brown kind of like motivational speech, then that YouTube search went into Tony Robbins, went into all these different speakers, Dwayne Dyer. And I think, one of the common things was like this reflection. You've got to reflect. You learn from your own book, And I started to obsessively reflecting on a daily basis, and where that I've never stopped, which is the crazy thing. And anyone that I have got like some sort of like mentor kind of feel, like if someone looks at me like that, I always go back to that reflection. And I think I've got like 18 books of diaries of reflections from that pivotal moment. And going back to what you said, having that mindset now and actually having done the work for so long consistently, I've unpicked all these moments from a kid that has now made me so open to what that impact had on me and what I learnt from that. I've unpicked so many things that didn't make sense to me. That's my whole philosophy now is, as long as I understand it, or I think I understand something or someone, if it makes sense to me, that's all I need. Because then that gives me the conviction to move forward on my decision making, on what I think about someone, how I should treat someone, because I've done the work. And then that's kind of like, I feel like whatever's happened, I've unpicked it. I can't wait to go back and reflect on some stages. And even in my reflection, sometimes it's a poem. Sometimes it's a story. I'll make up stories to reflect on an idea or a moment, or I'm so creative with how I do it now because it's got to be engaging for me. And every now and then I'll let someone read something and they think it's pretty powerful. So I think it's the art of reflection, but 100% all those moments made me who I am, and I'm very open to that now. And I also would have to say that I think that's your life journey is to understand yourself. That's the first thing everyone is trying to do, is understand what they're passionate about, what their purpose is in life, and who they are as a person. And once you can find that, you've got to understand what I've understood, or what's happened to me, is that when I understood that, which I feel like was about 10 or so years ago, when I started to try to let that shine, there was people around me that just wouldn't let that shine. Because you've created contacts and friends and an environment that's around you that just don't know who you really are because you've never let that shine. So once you let that shine and you get the kickback, or it may not feel good, then you've got to go find your people. And I think that's where, being my own boss there was a big part of trying to create my own environment, because I needed to create like an environment around me that was my people. And I think those three things together is what you see today. It's just a really happy, kind of settled person, work hard, but very content.
You mentioned people, big one, obviously when you went to uni.
Yep.
You mentioned people just then. But you also talked about the creative brain, the innovation. But you also mentioned ADHD, undiagnosed.
Yep.
They're three, I think, key ingredients to running a business.
Sure.
To growing and being innovative like you have been,
Yep.
to start eventually Airlocker.
Yep. Well, I think in my opinion, I've always wanted to embrace that I was different, and I love different people. I'm attracted to people that are different. And not to say that I'm not attracted to people that are quite normal either. I don't even know what normal is, to be honest. But I think the want to always be keeping my mind active keeps me healthy. Like when I stop, that's where I go backward a lot. When I'm not active, I haven't got my mind focused on something positive, I just think doesn't serve me. So I think that's where that serves me. I'm always trying to be active, trying to be working on something. In many ways, I fill the gaps if I don't have stuff to work on. I'm just lucky that Airlocker's got so much in it that there's never really a dull moment. Because in the past, I was a CEO of a gold mining company. To get to that point when I was 30 was an incredible achievement to me, a public listed company as well, Taylor Resources. But prior to that, I was doing 4 businesses. Like I had my main business, and then I had 3 other side businesses, because I just was so actively looking for something. I don't know whether or not it was my purpose, but I just really enjoyed doing things, and having that innovation mindset, trying to do things differently, was always my style from a kid. I wanted to play football differently. I wanted to do this differently. Because I didn't have the skill sets that other people had. I had my skill sets and was just trying to let that shine in a different way. So I think doing things in your own way is important, and finding a way to let your own skills shine is really important, and what your place is. And sometimes you need that really innovation or innovative thinking to get to that point. So they've served me really well with Airlocker. If you look at what Airlocker is, it's so different, so unique. And it's definitely a journey on how I got to that point. But it does definitely serve me well.
And, capacity, you just shared, you're running 4 businesses, CEO of 1, you're innovating in others. Capacity, some people struggle. They say they're busy, they'll go to work, they'll go home, they'll go to bed, and they're busy. I don't see that as busy. Well, it is, but I see more capacity, and your capacity must be great.
Yeah, I'm grateful that I've got that. I look at other people's lives and, I guess there's two parts to that. I went on a cruise once and we went to Vanuatu, and I seen people that just literally slept all day, ate seafood all day, but they were the happiest I've ever seen in a human. So, I mean, as long as you're happy, right? But then you get the other people like you may be mentioning, which is they're saying they're busy, but on the other hand, they want to achieve. They want to do this. I'm going to do this, but they're not doing the work. That's confusing for me, right? Because it really is a wasted opportunity where they're not seeing it, right? Maybe they need some education. They need to open up their mind. They need more experience. They need some motivation. They need to be around a coach. I think for me, I've just been a fiend for mentors. Like, the limitations in my mind have always given me energy to find the answer, whereas I feel like with a lot of people, the limitations within their mind or their experience have stopped them. And that's maybe a confidence thing, right? All they have to do is find the right mentor, ask the right questions, but back it up with hard work, and that person will continue to nurture them. If you go up and you see people that come up to people with experience and they ask a question and they're very keen, and then that person gives them their time and their tenants and whatever they have, and then that person does nothing with it, or just wants them to get the mentor to do all the work and do the business plan and do this, then they're not going to get far, right? Because like someone like me would see that and say, all right, well, I'm not going to put my time and effort into someone that's not going to give their time and effort to what they're trying to do. So yeah, I definitely see that. But I think for me, it's always been something's been motivating because I want to find the answer. I want to find the person that can give me that answer, or, even just watching so much resources online can give you so much. So once you learn that art of finding answers, I think you'll be fine, whatever you want to do.
So you could have stayed the CEO of a gold mining organisation and been very safe and comfortable, but there was clearly a shiny red ball over there that looked like air locker training. Where did that idea come from, and how scary was it quitting to start it? Yeah,
it was hugely scary, but I kind of did it to myself, to be honest. Like, the whole idea around air locker is when I was working, I was traveling a lot. Prior to that, I was traveling a lot again. When I was a managing director of a company called Landtrack, we used to have trucks, 3,000 trucks, yellow goods going every day, right? And so my role was to oversee major projects and also team. So I transitioned out of that because I was away from home too much. I go into gold mining, and again, but that was the shiny toy. It was like, oh, CEO, I've always wanted that, and I was only 30 or just below 30. So I took that, but it took me away from my family as well. And a mentor said to me when I was in Norseman, which is in between Esperance and Kalgoorlie, I was there, population of about 4,000 people. There's a pub there and a gold mine, right? And I'm not happy there, and I was loving what I was doing, but I just wasn't happy. And he said to me, Rome, isn't it funny? You're doing all this work for the people you love and you never see them. And so that just stuck with me, and I was like, right, man, I could probably just do something with a corporate and write it out, maybe go to an executive role or something in the civil industry or mining. But it's just by chance that I started thinking about, I love fitness and health. I love doing the gym, and I'd seen some incredible stories from Australian brands like F45, Body Fit Training at that stage was really spawning, and I'm like, wow, this group training space is pretty cool. And I started to train in group training rather than doing my own workouts, and I thought I could give it a good crack. Going back to what Jay said before, the innovation was always the mindset, do something different. So the first, it wasn't always air locker. That wasn't the first idea. The first idea was, what can I do differently that is commercial, that people would love, from kind of cradle to grave, or like a big span of people, using this model that F45 pioneered. This was the initial mindset, and just do one in Newcastle. That was it. Because if I knew the numbers, I'd learnt the numbers of what a really good group training could do, and if you get it really well and you go 300 members plus, you've got 10 years and you don't need to work. That's your lifestyle. And I thought if I did that well, I could do 2 or 3. you could potentially bring in $1 million a year. This is my mindset, because financially I wanted financial freedom as well. So I thought, on the back of that, I'm home, I'm doing something I love with the family, it's got a great payoff for me, and it's low risk, right? So that was the initial thought. So the model, I was even contemplating doing a franchise myself. But the model was Sport Club. That was the first name of it, The Sport Club. Sport Club was taken, so it was called The Sport Club. And the Sport Club was taken too, so I put an E on the back of sport. So the Sporte Club. My actual wallet, my first credit card that I've still got for Air Locker is called the Sport Club. So that was the
With
first.
the extra E.
With the extra E.
You could have gone Sporte Clube as well and just added lots of E's.
Yeah, this is again, I wasn't thinking of a global brand at the time. I was just call it anything. And the idea was to do a group training 50 to an hour minute session around sports, whether it be combat sports, team sports, or Olympic Games. And I was going to theme them. So one day we might do NBA Tuesdays. So the kind of 40 seconds on the station would be pivots and jump shots. And then we do rugby, where it's hand-eye coordination, or athletics at Olympic. And I was going to run like a 3-month program, and that would change every 3 months. So that was the initial idea. And during that journey, I heard about altitude training. I was like, oh, this, what is this? And the altitude training never really been done before, which when I started to learn about the science, and I'd done altitude training before as well, I just was like amazed that it wasn't everywhere. And so I pivoted from that initial idea and started to look at the concept of altitude training, and the game changer for me was the engineering behind it. And I knew it really well. I knew nitrogen gas systems really well from mining, because we couldn't put oxygen underground, so we had to use nitrogen. And the nitrogen gas system that they were using in health and fitness for altitude was the same as what we use in mining. So I just knew I had a really cool project to work on that I knew something about. And again, going back to what we said about understanding how to make this work and not having the answers, who do I call? So it was like a research and development kind of project for me. And, in a really quick kind of 2 or 3 months, I had the answers to a lot of my questions, and I had an idea on how to change what they were doing to make it better and less costly, less consuming of energy. And we made our prototype in November 2018. It worked in a lab-based kind of bench test. And but we had to scale it. So I thought, well, fuck it, let's just do one in a whole new studio and see if it works. And that's how we did the first studio. With a lot of risk, I didn't know if it was going to work.
Does that still exist?
We literally just moved.
Cool.
So the Newcastle site in Hunter Street, we just moved because they're putting the big dairy farmers building there. But it worked, and that was the first pass of Air Locker training. And from that point, I've never had a doubt that it was never not going to work. It's never been a scary part for me. But as this was happening, I was still working, right? I was still working. And we opened the doors. We didn't do a pre-sale. We had no members. I remember the first few days that we opened, I went and met Mark Hughes. He was getting ready for Mount Kilimanjaro. Got his whole Mount Kilimanjaro team in. They helped me out with their marketing and branding and got some more people in. We started getting traction, but this was tough. It was a lot tougher than I thought. I thought just open the doors and everyone would come. So, didn't do much marketing and whatnot back then, because, with my mining career, we never really marketed. It was mainly just, conversations. And so got into social media, got into all that stuff, influencer marketing, digital marketing, learn all that stuff. And it was a slow burn, but I had to put my time and energy and my full force into this business. So I had to, step down with my job at that time. It was scary. My wife didn't want me to do it. She had the comfort, security. But ever since that time, I never looked back. And it hasn't been an easy ride ever since that. We had COVID literally in March the year after that. And so it's been a difficult task, but I've never lost belief that this is going to be something amazing, because from day dot, it's always brought great people to it. I've had so many good moments on it, and it changes lives and it makes people happier. So, it was scary, mate, but it was just a belief I had. I still got that. Like, it's just something about Air Locker that makes me think. And a lot of people that have a real big touch on it, they all say the same thing. It's like, oh, this is going to be something big, you know? So that nurtured my mindset, and I haven't looked back.
Skills can be unfair. So your engineering background, you go through, you do your MBA, and you see the engineers, great brains, great processes, really sort of deep thinkers, which can usually be the stifling part to sales and marketing. So it's unfair on a brain like that because you may have the best idea and not be able to grow it because you need to make it a great idea for everyone else. You talked about marketing, you talked about influencer marketing. What was that like, and how did you get it going? What was the strategy behind it?
Strategy for Air Locker was initially, how can I put this? Okay, so what we're doing right now is really important, but what's in my mind and has been in my mind since I've created this kind of concept, it won't be in the open until another 2 or 3 years. So what you see now with Air Locker is really the first part of really where I want to take it. So the initial idea was to make altitude training commercial enough that people would love it. So the vehicle of that was group training. So my strategy was, from learning from all the other brands that had done it, that was my first step. Okay, how did other brands do this? How did the F45s do it? How does Anytime Fitness do it? How does, some of these bigger brands in America do it, UK? So I just went on a big research and learnt that influencer marketing, social media, digital marketing, funneling, ad sets, I just kind of went down that path. Having advocacy for the brand through known faces was a big thing. We were seeing that a lot, right?
Did you have any trouble selling it to them?
No, I never really had an issue getting these people around it. But once we start, and also the product had to be commercial, had to be great. And I've seen some trends happening in the market where people were in terms of training, wanted more strength. They wanted to do more lifting. I started to see there was a gap in the market, that there wasn't any real true way to do genuine back and biceps and triceps unless if you went to a big box gym. So I created like a pin-loaded equipment inside a group training facility, which has never been done before, because I felt like you do the free weights and plus the functional movements in the cardio machine. So I thought there was a gap there, so I changed our equipment pack to make it quite unique as well, not just the altitude. So I think initially it was the product, trying to get something that I felt was very commercial for the general gym goer. The other thing was the price point was pretty much set, so price point was important too, and value, trying to add value to it, right? So initially it was trying to get the product right, get the marketing right, get some people around it that people knew so they could trust the brand, work on this free experience strategy, get them in, get around them with kindness, keep them, create that community and culture, have a big social element to the gym as well. So it's like a club culture. So it wasn't just training, it was clubs, we were going out and having fun and things like that. And create that culture. On the back of that, it was all numbers based behind the scenes. All right, so how do we incrementally, attrition, how do we keep a member? Don't have the churn. All right, they need to be nurtured. They need to be checked in. They want to have a plan. So we were doing stuff like that very manually, right? Very manually. And then, the front end marketing stuff was just content. And the great thing about gyms is a lot of people want to take selfies. So organic, tagging friends, so they could share. And so I think that was the initial strategy, was just to get success out of Studio One. And also showing altitude as something that was for everyone, right? It wasn't just for the elite athlete. So we started a Silver Sneakers program for 60 years and plus. Now, when we started that program, that broke down every barrier that you would have, because if your grandma's training and you're not, because you don't want to do altitude, that broke the barrier. We put on 46 members on that first month we did the Silver Sneakers program. So indirectly, it had a big impact on the general public. And no one was training these people. No one was training that demographic whatsoever. So it was a great thing for the brand. It gave us a good touch. And giving back to community was a big thing too. Like being a community leader as a business was massive. So did a lot of charity work and So I think the culmination of that was really the manual learning, and we started getting a lot of traction. And then it was like, all right, well, when COVID hit, it was online. So that digital space was the next learning. So digital space. Now here's the thing, right? Now we were so digitally minded out of COVID that now if you don't have it right now, even though we're not in lockdown, you'll get eaten up. So now that the trend is digital, right? Omni-channel. Got to have multiple touches on your members now. So it's like, all right, well, the gym space, you can't just see them walk in the bricks and mortar and that's the only touch point. You got to have multiple touches on them. So now we're creating a loyalty program. We've got an app, member-facing app that we're doing where you've got a home product if you can't get into the gym, so you don't lose your momentum. You know, you can refer a friend, you can judge the workout, you get that feedback loop, multiple touch points, do your diet, same as like all the Fitness Power apps. So now we're creating all that stuff, so we've got multiple touch points. So that's really what we've learned. It's been a transition of like marketing, influencer marketing, to then real, raw and honest, nurturing in-studio, community leader, through to the digital marketing space, and now you've got to put it all together.
We watched during the lockdowns lots of local gyms going online and still hosting classes and still trying to generate some income. But what you do is so special, it has to be done in your buildings, except you did touch on some home stuff there. What did you do? How do you do it? How do you do high altitude at home?
No, we didn't, but as long as we kept them moving and kept, like, you know, lockdown was one of those things where you're getting isolated. So it was like just keeping them engaged, keeping a face to the brand and keeping in contact with your people was the key thing there. And look, you know, ultimately the altitude wasn't there, but that community spirit was there, that care was there. And that's
the
big
momentum
part.
is still key, right? You still want to keep moving, so when you get back in the gym, you're good to go.
100%. And I think, like I said, that's what I see in the market now. You can't turn the tap off that area. I think now we've had a feel for it. You need to give that omni-channel is massive. And different modalities. Now I'm starting to see a real big presence and push in, you know, breath work, in meditation, in different modalities like that are really important. So now the offering from Airlocker is quite hybrid. You know, we do meditation at the end of each workout. I introduced that after COVID. I thought that was important. And kind of like Savasana at the end of yoga. It's a really good way to finish the workout. But now we're going to extend that and have like the member-facing app to be able to give you that if you want it as an option. You know, the other thing too is like momentum's a funny thing. If you can understand motivation, if you can understand that really well, that's the key, because you can, like a gym goer, Airlocker member can lose motivation like that. It could be a big night out and they just miss that first Monday morning wake up. Then the next one is harder to get up, and
new habit is formed.
I'm telling you, and then you're done. You're out of flow.
Yep.
So, you know, online's a really good way to keep momentum. You know what? If you miss that morning, you've got a 20, 15-minute workout just to tick the box, and you're back in flow. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm seeing is that, you know, the brands that will go really well in the future invest heavily in tech and do it very, very well. And the tech is going to help us remove any friction from the member trying to book or do things, and it's going to increase engagement. And that's just the member side, right? And then what we do is we're selling businesses to business owners that may not have been in business before. They may have had an experience in a different industry like I had. So then you've got the franchise portal part, or the franchising part of this, which is increasingly like what we've had, like it's very important, right? And I feel like with a lot more media and a lot more voice of customer, you're starting to see some of the horror stories in franchising. And we've seen like, you know, with the F45 that has been very well publicised lately, that, you know, their share price went from $16.50 down to $1, you know, in 18 months. And, you know, that flow-on effect is really going to affect their franchisees. And what we've seen is one of the key things out of that was franchisee success. You know, we've seen a lot of franchises sell, but we don't really understand if the franchisee is being successful. So now, like, that's in the public, it's in the open. That's the focus now, is to really focus on franchisee success, which comes down to the business owner. There needs to be a really solid vetting out process on who that owner will be. But as soon as you accept them into your brand, you need to really nurture them. as much as they're going to nurture their members. So I think that's the next thing for Air Locker, is really dedicated on that franchisee success. And I think tech's a big part of it, and also creating a really good brand awareness and a really good brand reputation.
So another successful franchise is McDonald's.
Yeah.
And, they scaled and they went to the masses. But from what I believe, one thing they learnt was they now only sell to people who have come through the system and live and breathe it. And if anything, their number of people involved in franchises is now smaller. Is that going to be an approach for you? Is that something you've got to live and breathe, or how do you scale that?
I'd love to have a philosophy where you have to work in an Air Locker for free for 12 months before you could buy one. That'd be unreal. I think they're 38 restaurants around the world allow them to kind of. I mean, they've got the track record, mate. Yeah, we've got to prove ourselves. The idea around Air Locker now is the first part was just to get a little bit out there, get the brand out there, right? Now, when you're starting something from scratch, it's not really the product they believe in, it's you as the founder. And I feel like a lot of our first franchisees were friends of mine, people that knew me from working in other industries. They backed me. As we grew our HQ team, it was people invest in the brand that knew someone else that was in the brand, that they trusted them. So it was really a personal thing. So from that point, now we've got some data, we've got some track record. Now we're starting to see a lot of franchisees investing in Air Locker that we don't even know, right? So what we need to do is we need to be very in the trenches with these owners, because when you start up a business, and the way we did it with no capital, right, just self-funded, it's like an incremental growth, right? And I think something quite new and innovative like me had to go that way. I had to prove it. I'm not going to expect seed funding in too early. And I didn't want to do that anyway, because I felt if I got investor money in, they would have dictated the way that I ran the business. Like I was pivoting left, right and centre. It was too much control. So I think where we're at the moment is where we've proven ourselves. We've got some great data, great studios operating, a great community. As you mentioned at the start, like we've sold over 70, which is astronomical from where we started, only 3 years ago, 2 years of COVID, really.
I was going to say, did it slow down during COVID?
Yeah.
Do you think COVID hurt you at all in the process of selling a gym then?
Yeah, it hurt us in the sense that we started getting momentum. When we opened up the franchising business for sale was September 2020. So that's when we started selling franchises.
COVID had been around for 6 months.
Yeah. And we pivoted to the franchise model during COVID because we had time. And I think from that point, just having people love the brand was one thing, but then committing to a lease, they have to commit to a lease to go through a DA. There was a lot like holding back. This year we've seen a lot of leases getting signed, a lot of fit outs are happening at the moment. We should finish the year with around about 16 to 18 operating studios. But next year, from January to February, we're opening up 18 in 2 months. And I think that's the byproduct of a new brand, starting a new franchise during COVID, and then we've had a good 12-month run at it this year, and now you'll start to see the perpetuating effect of that hard work coming next year. But that scale is something that's we've been really waiting for, and I think the time that we've had to wait, we've used to really good purposes for the brand, because being so hungry for it to start to grow, and the mindset we have, it's just been building that support system for the franchisee. So look, it's been a patient waiting game, but I think some of the best things come off the back of sitting back and being patient. So
it must be interesting though to have this idea that you've grown your baby, if you like, and to hand it over to other business owners. It's one thing to know them locally and pass it on to friends and to have it 30 kilometres away from the original one, but to see it in Perth now and over other sides of the world, is that a bit scary? You lose control over the...
One thing you learn with franchising, anyone that wants to be a franchisor will be ready for this. If it's your idea and your money, you can sleep at night. It might be tough, but there's a level of if it doesn't work out, it's my own fault. But when someone else buys your idea and invests in your idea, and they've put their life savings into it or their money into it, you lose sleep at night, initially. And it's still tough for me. So it's So it's a scary thing, right? But that's the sharpness you need. That's the edge you need to keep going and do it for them. If you don't have that feeling like how I have, where it's like, holy hell, these guys need to be successful because it's their money, it's their hopes, they're invested in my idea. And now I really believe it's like our whole team's idea because they've had so many touch points on it now. It's not just mine. It keeps you so hungry that's what you need to keep going. And I think it is scary, but the more and more we're doing it now, we're getting the result. Like I've got my business partners, I've got my team working around the culture that we have around studio success is such it's so ingrained in us that I sleep easy now because I know the work's getting done from every different aspect. So yeah, it used to be tough though. Because, like I said, it's like, holy shit, this is my idea. They're investing in it. They better be successful. So, but I think that's the drive you need, because otherwise you might get a little bit lazy on it,
Because you talk about sleeping easy now. What's a day like
don't
for
sleep
you?
much.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't either. I'm a 5 hours a night sort of guy.
Yeah.
What's your schedule look like? Because you're having to sell.
Yep.
You're having to innovate. You're having to spend time with family.
Yep.
You're having to sort of operationally set up new things.
Yep.
What's the day look like?
Yeah, so I'm up early. I like to try to get a work in early, whether it be 5 o'clock, 5:50 workout.
At altitude.
At altitude, if I'm lucky enough. If I'm travelling, I'll train at a group training facility, one of our competitors, to learn as much as I can. I like to, I'm good friends with the founders of those brands as well. The way I look at it, I'd like to be in a position where when it's all said and done, that we can share stories. Similar to when you play sport. We compete hard, but we're doing the right thing for community. So, but I try to get up. I try to get a workout in early. Keeps me going. But mate, I'll go to bed around about 12. Wake up at 4:30. So, I get home. I'll work maybe from like 6:30 through to 10 at night. I'll download for an hour and a half. Go to bed. Wake up, and I'll do that 7 days a week. And on the weekends, I'll do, rather than the work block, I'll do a family block, but always at night working. So I'll be on this level, 80 to 100 hour weeks. I usually used to tap out about 70 hour weeks. So I'm doing 100 hour weeks. And I'll do this for the next couple of months. I've been on this journey for the last 2.5 months. So I'll do spurts like 3 or 4 months like that. And then I'll go back down to a 60 hour week. But it's always routine. Routine's the key. What I've learned over the past,
I love that, by the way. That's constantly what I preach, routine.
Routine's everything for me. Now, having a routine under a unstructured kind of schedule is the key too. So I've pinpoint, like traveling, right, flying, we're interstate, overseas. Straight away, where's my food? Where's my gym? Where's my workplace? Where's my meeting schedule? What's my structure around that? What's my time zones? Set up the calendar and then look at it as if I'm not traveling. Because for some reason, I used to have this thing when I was in mining that whenever I was going, whether it be overseas or interstate, I had to make the most of it. I don't know what it was. It was an energy when you travel. But now I nullify that. I dull it out. I'm just in a new spot, doing the same thing, and I've just controlled my mindset. So I get a structure around an unstructured environment is what I've learned, and it allows me to not feel run down when I get home. It's like just business as usual. I try not to teach my mind to think that I've been away, So that's kind of what you learn, like when you're trying to keep your mindset right, because you can get into a dark hole, as you know, Jay. Like for me, I'd travel away and then I'd be just a shell of myself for 2 days. It's like, what's going on here? All I was on a plane or I was driving. But now I've kind of learnt that it was routine or an energy that I had to being somewhere new. And so, lots of work, but I love what I do. So, and I've got a few runner mates as well now that are in the studio with me. I feel like the team over the last 2 months has really lifted. Like there was me at the start, then there's me and business partner Shandor, and now got, one of our other workers, Ellie, then I've got Reese, who's in Tasmania, he's our tech guy, and I've got a couple of guys in Sydney. I'm seeing their social media, they're up, there's this thing, right? So I think culturally they understand we're about to scale, we're about to hit the curve. Definitely that's something that we're starting to see. This curve is about to hit us, and they all know it. So we're
As
putting
in
the work
going
in.
from 8 to 74.
Yeah, well, I think the scary bit is going from 8 to 36 by the end of Feb. So we're talking 4 months to go to that scale. So there's a lot of foundation work we need to do. Like I'll be recruiting. I've recruited 2 senior parts of the team that will start in November and October. That will have the ability to build out their teams as well and different elements of our business. And then it's just staffing up and then getting a formula around how that looks. So I mean that's a big part of it. But we've got projects at the moment, like the tech projects taking up a lot of time, marketing projects taking up a lot of time, and then we're running the business too. And I think a lot of business owners will understand that. Like when you start a business, you'll pivot and you'll learn and you'll go, okay, I need that to bolt that on. I need to move into this area, but you're still running a business at the whole time. So it's the understanding. Like my philosophy is 9 to 5 is it's business time. Whatever that looks like. But from 5 to midnight, that's project work time. That's like taking space around things. Right, so then you can really, at the very least, you'll get on top of stuff. So when you're in business time, you're active. You're present. You're in it. So I think that's what our teams realise. We're building and running at the same time, which is a lot of businesses do that, and so we're just in a big project phase at the moment. Plus we're scaling, so it's the only way we think that we can get through that is just put the hours in. And
so you're growing. It's exciting.
Yep.
How do you manage people when potentially it's not, and you got to roll up the sleeves and there's some grunt, and it might take longer than you thought, and you see that motivation decline a little bit? What's the approach there?
My style is mainly I get in the trenches with everyone. Like I think there's not one role, there's not one part of our business that I can't do. So, and I think that will change. I've got to probably learn to step back a little bit. So, being in the trenches is kind of the way that I love to work. I love being involved with it. But obviously, a scaling business, there's going to come a time where we're going to put a lot of trust in those senior team and the people. But the dips always come off the back of losing momentum. Same as training. So for me, it's like man management or female management is really important to understand them as people, their pinch points, their backgrounds, asking questions, having a good social kind of presence or some fun with it as well helps a lot. But I feel like I've got a team that looks at it not just like a job, it's like they love being there. There's so much more elements to our environment, our culture, that keeps them motivated. They go the extra mile because there's just something more to it. And I think I look for people that really love what they do and love what we do and really passionate. And, I'm just grateful I've got a team that sees a big future for themselves in what we do. And I'm very open. There's no real closed doors in our office. I think, again, I always say this to my team, this is the best time we'll ever have. Right now, there's not going to be a better time than this because we're so close to ourselves as a team. I sit in the boardroom, strategic chat, financial chat, everyone's around it. My company accountant says I'm way too open. It's going to bite you in the ass one day. People are going to take advantage of your openness, Rome. But at the moment it works really well because they all feel they're a part of this journey, not just as an employee, but as a stakeholder. It's one of the strategic things I did. I gave every key personnel an opportunity to buy into the business, whether it be, a very minor share, but, they're owners of it too. So, like at the big table, all of those people around that table are an owner. So when we open up new studios or something happens, they're all getting they can see their valuation and their wealth rise. So that's been a critical part to having that openness and that that kind of like energy we get from the workers. But I just keep going that way, right? Like, and if people fall down, I just keep going that way, and I don't really go back. I just keep going that way. I have the conversations I need to have, and if it falls off, and there's been plenty of people fall off the train so far, so be it. We do it amicably, and we move on, and then my mindset's what's the next move, and I figure that out, and just keep moving forward.
What's next then for Roman Brady? Can this franchise idea work outside of Australia, or is it very Aussie?
Yeah, look, there's the what of what this could be, and for me, is probably a couple of day chat, because it's just so much in this, right? But what Roman Brady does now is and moving forward is exactly the same thing that I've been doing that works. Just going back to routine, having really good people around me, enjoying the moments. Just enjoying life. I've got a great family. I've got great kids. Very present when I'm at home with them. So, and investing my time into Airlocker is whatever that does, it will do. I just know all I got to do is the same thing as I'm doing now. Because the future will be what the future is. Who knows what this is going to be, right? I've got a vision for what that looks like. I actually see it like it's already happened. That's how clearly I see where this is going.
Is that important? Is that sort of part of your whole mantra too, that you're embracing the ADHD, the class clown you talked about at the beginning, the charm and the personality, but then seeing it already like it exists?
I think it's really important, if you want to be a leader, to get people to see it as well. I think vision, and the way I see it, the way I explain it, people think it's already happened. Because for me, it's like, that's how I feel about it. I think it's important to have that if you're going to lead a team to go there as well. There needs to be a very strong vision. For me, I like thinking about it. It's the dreaming part of it. It is sometimes distracting if you think too much about where you're going. It's one of those things. If you look at the top of the mountain, you'll trip over in front of the rock in front of you. So you got to be here. You got to be present. But look, I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. I love my life. I love the people that are in my life. I love the connections and the moment. For me, this is a moment. Connecting with Jay again from 10 years ago. I love how work has it, how the world has a way to work itself out. Like things come full circle. And I like to be simple as well in my efforts and what I do, and so that's all I know. That's all I want to do. I want to do some really good things in the future, and I know if I just keep dedicating myself to my craft and my work and my people and being a good person, and that honesty will set you free as well. Being true and honest with who I am and how I approach things, that will take me a long way. And so where it goes in the future, we'll see.
It was an idea only a few years ago, and we're very impressed with how far you've come. Can't wait to see what the next 5 years look like. Roman, thank you for being part of the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Amazing. Thank you.